To Stephen Gruzd, who heads the African Governance and Diplomacy Program and the South African Institute of International Affairs. Stephen, just listening to that latest report there from our correspondent in Uganda this morning, I mean, voting started at 7 o'clock, but the social media platforms have been shut down, the internet has been shut down, and we understand that Bobi Wine was relying on the tech-savvy Ugandan youth to give him a very good showing in this poll. But the authorities there have clamped down on those platforms. I mean, he doesn't stand a chance from what we are seeing with all the violence that also led up to this election to unseat Yoweri Museveni.
It's going to be very difficult. Museveni, as you said, has been in power since 1986. He knows all the tricks of staying in power. He's changed the constitution twice. First to get rid of term limits and second to get rid of age limits. And the age limits were put in by him and his party to prevent former rivals from running against him. It's a very difficult situation for people to campaign. Campaigns have been curtailed because of supposed COVID restrictions. Well, I think COVID is very real, but it's meant people haven't been able to campaign or have rallies. And as you said, cyberspace has now been blocked by the authorities where a lot of those votes for Bobi Wine might come from. So it's an uphill battle, but he seems confident, and you just never know. Sometimes the rejection of the incumbent is just so emphatic that all of these tricks and stratagems don't work. But this remains to be seen what will happen in Uganda.
Yeah, I saw a quote of an interview with Nigerian author Wole Soyinka talking about the fact that Bobi Wine's performance in this election in Uganda is a critical moment for Africa, where we know we've got these leaders like Yoweri Museveni who overstay their welcome in power and keep on keeping on. Meanwhile, the people on the ground are suffering. I mean, 54 people had been killed by the end of last year, leading up to this election, as the authorities were clamping down on campaigning.
Yeah, I mean, he seems to have a very magnetic personality. In fact, those people were killed in the wake of his second arrest. He's now been arrested 3 times. He alleges that he's been tortured. But he does seem to have a very enigmatic a personality that draws people in and speaks. His sound bites are very quotable, and he very, very well. I mean, you know, there is some precedent for this. If you look at Liberia, where George Weah came in, a former football star. Nelson Chamisa came very close in Zimbabwe, and some say he may have even won the elections. So is this, are we seeing a time for the changing of the guard? Museveni is 78 years old, for goodness sake.
Yeah, but he says he's still fighting fit. He says that he's the hope for the future. I think that's a slogan he's been using, that people must vote for him to secure their future, and that he's given jobs to the youth. But many of them were not even born when he came to power in 1986.
Absolutely, and I think you know, incumbency has a power all of its own. He's able to have access to the levers of state power. He projects himself as youthful. It's very people will be looking very, and people have not been able to freely campaign for this. And again, as I say, unless it's an absolute groundswell, he may be set to be in State House for another 5 years.
Yeah, and from what we've seen historically, Museveni, he's managed to fuse the line or make the line disappear between state and party so well that people who work for his party believe they're entitled to the roles in the state, and you can't get a role in the state unless you are part of his organization.
Absolutely. The National Resistance Movement has been in power with him since 1986. It's a very well-organized party, whereas Bobi Wine doesn't have those party structures. We've seen it, you know, even in South Africa when new parties have split off from the ANC. They just don't have the people on the ground. They just don't really have the structures to challenge. And I think the shutting down of the internet is significant. It's happened in probably 15 to 20 African countries over the last couple of years. It really restricts people's information. Often the internet is used to take photographs of results that are posted outside polling stations or even sometimes ballot papers, and there's controversy over whether that undoes the sanctity of the vote. But those photos are sent centrally to collection points for people to verify the vote. Also in this election, there are very few observers. I think there's a mission from the African Union. There might be one from the East African community, but domestic observers have been blocked, as have some foreign missions. So, for example, the Americans wanted to have an observer mission, but 75% of the people who were waiting to come had visas refused. So the Americans have said they're not going to put up an observer mission. And although, of course, they can't be perfect, it's just another check and balance to ensure that people behave on election day.
We'll have to see what the outcome will be like. Thank you very much for your time, Stephen Gruzd from the International Institute here in Johannesburg, looking at what's happening with the election in Uganda. Okay, let's